Hello and welcome. Today I've decided to share with you something I made a while back, and hopefully you can do the same after watching this video. I guess it's a pretty cool way to display some of my old Mario games. I'm really not sure what you would call it, maybe a wooden Mario video game display, info center, or possibly a 3D creation. Either way, a while back I got bored and decided to make something for my man cave. I had all these extra video game carts laying around because I collect them, so I get duplicates, and I wanted to display them somehow. I also had a lot of scrap wood from other projects that I just didn't want to throw away. And I knew that eventually I would need the wood for something anyway. So I started brainstorming, and I put something together in like 4 hours total, and I don't think it would take you much longer to do the same. I never thought to make a do-it-yourself tutorial, but I took a whole bunch of pictures along the way, and I'll be able to at least use them in this guide, which should help you quite a bit. Now, I actually got this idea from watching my kids make perler bead projects. If you don't know what perler beads are, they're like these little beads that you glue together, and you could make different patterns and basically things out of patterns. And my son was putting together a Zelda and Mario perler bead project. And, you know, I saw what he was doing, and it basically reminded me of those 8-bit pixels. You know, he's basically rearranging these little dots or pixels to make a image. And it almost seemed to be like a one-to-one recreation of, I think it was Zelda for the original Nintendo. And then I thought, you know, why couldn't I do something like this with wood? And within 5 minutes, I was cutting out little wooden squares to put this project together. Anyway, the total time, if you leave out the dry time on things that I had to paint or stain, is no more than 4 hours into this project tops. Sounds good, right? So I think even a beginner can recreate this, and hopefully after watching these steps, you might be encouraged to do the same. The materials needed are one 46-inch by 24-inch piece of plywood, whatever thickness you want, but I don't recommend going under 1/2 inch. I'll get to that in a little while. You'll need another piece of scrap plywood of any size or dimension, as long as it's 18 square foot in total. And this is to cut out your little blocks. You'll need paint or spray paint colors of your choosing. Mario is composed of the colors red, tan, black, blue, brown, and gold. The model paint is pretty cheap, and so is spray paint, to be honest. Then you'll need a total of 4 1-inch by 3-inch pine strips. This is for the framing. 2 need to be 26 inches in length, and then 2 need to be 46 inches in length. You'll need the video game cartridges you wish to display, and then optionally you'll need one 1-inch thick sheet of plexiglass measuring probably at least 2 foot by 4 foot. You'll chop this up and score it when the time comes, or you'll have Lowe's cut it, and this is basically to better protect your infographics that you put up here. And you don't need plexiglass. You could probably laminate the paper if you wanted to. And then optionally you'll need like a 1 string of battery powered bottle lights. This is if you want to have any backlight on this thing. It's not needed, but it looks better. And also you'll need obviously photo paper and a printer. You'll need 2 2-inch screw eye hooks, and also like wood screws or finished nails, and some wood glue. Tools needed would be a power drill with some bits, and a table saw, and a chop saw. Perhaps you could probably do everything with just a table saw if you didn't have a chop saw, but the chop saw helps speed things up a little bit, and I'll get to that soon as well. Okay, now after you have your material gathered, you're ready to get started. The plexiglass, as I mentioned, was a pain because I failed scoring it thoroughly. So when I broke it, several pieces broke in the wrong direction. I wasted probably $10 in plexiglass there. Embarrassed and humbled because I hate asking for help, I kindly asked the glass cutter guy over at Lowe's to cut mine to size for me, which he did. If I had to do it again, I would just remember to score the plexi a few more times before attempting to snap it in half. It's too easy here. Okay. The first thing we're going to do is figure out the size of our backing board. I had 3/4 inch plywood laying around, which is probably overkill for this project. You can use 1/2 inch or something else like MDF even. I don't recommend going any thinner than that, only because you want this thing pretty durable, and eventually you're going to have to nail the pine framing into this thing, and if it were too thin, it just may be a little more difficult to get that done. So my scrap plywood that I used ended up being 46 inches by 24 inches. I think that's exactly what I had laying around anyway. So I decided to keep it that size and run everything off of that size. The next step was creating Mario himself. So I started Googling how many pixels the original Mario was, and I think I got something like no more than 12 pixels tall and 16 pixels wide. And, if my son can do this with perler beads, why can't we do this with little blocks of wood? Of course we can. So as a guide, I found some pixelated examples of Mario to base him off of, as you can see in this image. The pixels are broken down so you can better understand them. As you can see, the widest space is 12 pixels, whereas the tallest is 16. So we need 141 pieces of material to create 141 pixels. You can use anything you would like, really, as long as they're all identical in shape and size. In this case, I just used more scrap plywood. The wooden pixels I'm using are 1 1/4 inch by 1 1/4 inch, and the same thickness as the plywood that I already had, which is 3/4 inch scrap plywood. All right, so the next step is to pump out some of those little blocks that I was talking about to recreate Mario. So first we want to make strips out of the plywood or whatever material you use that are 1 1/4 inch wide. It's as easy as setting your guard on the table saw to the required length, or should I say width, and then start pushing them through. Now always use some sort of push stick when feeding the wood through. Definitely keep your fingers away from the blade. If your hands are being extended by some foreign object, you should never have to worry about losing a finger. And yeah, make sure to wear safety glasses as well. I get sawdust and crap in my eyes all of the time because I'm just a moron and I fail to wear them. It can really suck when a tiny piece of something is in your eye for a couple days, so make sure to use your glasses. All right, after pushing enough of these things through to get the overall length of the pixels combined, we can move on to the next step. Now, if my math is right, that's 141 pieces, and if each one is 1 1/4 inch, then we need 177 inches worth of material, which is almost 15 linear foot. Don't let all this jargon scare you. It's really simple. You just need 1 1/4 inch strips of plywood, overall 15 feet. It's really that simple. Now that we have enough of the required length, now we got to move on to the width. It's as simple as chopping them with your chop saw at 1 1/4 inches again. Now in the photo here, you can see I stacked up 3 at a time, and I cut and I repeat until I had the number of squares that I needed. So that's at least 141 of these little blocks. Now think of this as laying tile. If even one of your blocks is slightly out of size, you have to play games with your lines and make sure your edges are perfect. And I found out this was kind of a problem later on in my project. I was using my chop saw by eye, rather than setting up some sort of guard or stop for the wood I was cutting. So the pieces were not perfectly square. They were very close, and as far as the eye can see, you wouldn't be able to see a difference. But they weren't perfect. So when you start lining them up, if the height of one block is off a hair, it's going to mess up the next row. So you'll have to play games and shift things around a little bit, and it creates more work. So definitely use some sort of guard to ensure that every piece is the exact size and shape. And if you guys have a better way of pumping out these little squares, let me know. I'd like to hear what you have in mind. This is all I thought of, and it worked for me. Now next you'll want to start laying out all of your little pieces to paint. Now you can do a dry run if you wish, like we did, just to see what things look like, or better figure out your placement. But this was a total waste of time. Just center the thing off of the center of the wood and move on. And that'll save you probably a half an hour for nothing because there was no reason to. Now you can paint all of your little blocks as well as the backboard if you wish. We painted each one by hand, and to be honest, it's all just solid colors, so it didn't take that long at all. I believe she sealed them first with a product called Mod Podge, but this might not be needed, and it's also optional. Now, when it comes to painting all of these, it may seem kind of daunting, but you really blow through them pretty quickly. If I ever made another one of these, I would probably spray paint them all instead. This would definitely cut down the paint time. And if I recall, the garage wasn't that warm. This was a winter project, so we opted out of spray paint for that reason. Now we chose to paint the background blue, on the backing of the plywood, as well as some clouds. But to be honest, anything would work here, even if it was a solid color or a texture or a pattern or even wood stain. I would imagine sanding the face down really nice and then painting it black would look really nice too. And if I ever decided to make another one for like a Zelda project or something, that's probably exactly what I would do. And you can also see these steps in the photos here in the video. Unfortunately, I didn't take any videos. I wish I would have, but it is what it is now. Now the Mod Podge was used to seal the wood, and it probably made the painting process a little easier as well. If you want to do this, you're more than welcome to, and it doesn't take up too much more time. Now next is gluing down all of those little pieces of wood that we cut out. You can use a ruler or a straight edge or some sort of guide to make sure everything stays in line and is spaced properly, kind of like spacers for laying tile. But to be honest, we laid everything down by eye, and it came together just fine. You want to make sure to use a really good wood glue for your project, and don't be afraid to use more glue. Most of it dries clear anyway, and you'll never see like the little scant amounts of glue that might pop up in between the spaces of your pixels. Now after giving it time to dry, it's time to tack on the finished pine strips that we bought. These pine strips can be found at Lowe's, and they really are inexpensive, even with the cost of lumber rising. Now run the pine strips along your plywood and nail them down with a bunch of finish nails. I think the ones I used were maybe an inch. If you want to glue and clamp first before nailing, that's always recommended. I didn't bother with that, and I think they came out fine. I used one finish nail maybe every 2 inches, I would say. After that's all said and done, it should look a little something like this. Now I stained the pine to match the look of my man cave, but you can paint this, stain it, or even leave it plain. That's totally up to you. At any rate, at this point in time, it's really coming along, and it looks fun to see the product, or the finished product, get into its final stages. Now the final steps involve placing your video game carts as well as the infographic that you intend on using. I was able to cut out all of my information from old video game magazines. You're more than welcome to do the same, or you could pretty much find anything you want on Google and print it out yourself, and you could laminate it if you wanted to, or use plexiglass. I would imagine you would want something, that you could read describing the games you are hanging up here in some sort of fashion. Now, if you're using plexi, after cutting the plexi down to size, make sure to pre-drill each hole before screwing the plexi down, or you're definitely going to crack the plexiglass. Also, make sure not to tighten the screw too much, or you will definitely crack the plexiglass, as I did. I really hated working with that stuff. I don't like it at all. If I have to do this again, I'll probably figure out something else. I also used the same plywood strips that I cut my squares out of to act as little shelving to hold my video game cartridges in place. I used wood screws that had like prettier heads for this, and I think it helps with the overall look and aesthetic. The text that I used for each game was stenciled onto the cart shelves in white, and I'm pretty sure those golden stars also had, we used stencils for those as well. So even if you're not very artistic, it's not that hard to stencil paint over a piece of wood. So that's good, right? The final step was weaving like bottle lights throughout the four corners of the plywood to give it like a some backlight kind of, and it looks really cool when the rest of the room is dark and this thing is backlit. It's pretty neat looking. The lights I used were battery powered with like a little toggle switch that I have hanging on the top of the frame. So if I want to turn it on or off, all I have to do is hit this battery powered switch. I'm not running any power to it, and it's not taking up any other resources that my home may be offering. And the last thing I did was I pre-drilled and then screwed those little eye hooks into the top of the frame. And in one of the photos here, you can see how I did that. This thing is really, really heavy. So when it's all said and done, you definitely want this thing secured to some sort of stud or framing. Overall, I'm really happy with the way the project came out. I think it looks fine, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what you could come up with as well. Overall, it wasn't a very long project. It's definitely something you could complete in one day. So good luck, and let me know how you make out.